This week's episodes were brought to you by the generous support of Eric Sumner. Alright, so the other way around. 20 minus high zoom gives us a value of 3. And p dot y minus high zoom. There we go. So this will be equal to, when we're actually at our max, which is 20, this will be equal to 3 over 3, which gives us the value 1, which means we get our 90 degrees. When we're at 17, which is the lowest we can be, it'll be 17 minus 17, which is a 0, which means we'll be at 60. Great. So that's if, and then finally else. Just make sure that our camera is properly set to a 60 over here. A lot of work just to get a camera angle that, you know, might not look crappy. Let's find out. Ooh. Whoop. So as soon as it's going to 17, it gets all fucked. Oh no, it's just a lot faster than you'd think. $60, and then there we go. So now it's starting to pull up. There you go. All the way to 90 degrees. Zoom in. Maybe it should be smooth and continuous the whole way through. Oh, derp. You know what? Just do py divided by max height. Now, it won't quite ever reach the minimum, but if we hit like a 0 in there, oops, order of operations matter. Does mean we'll hit the 90 degrees sooner. Feels okay. So there's like a little bit of range at the max, and then it starts to pull in. I mean, maybe not 90 degrees, but at the same time, it's pretty handy to look straight down. I mean, who doesn't like that in a strategy game, to be able to see the flat world? I mean, I know like we're not doing learning programming stuff right now. This is more like obsessing over tiny details. But they're details that feel good. I think I'm happy with this. It feels like I'm the one doing the mouse scrolling, and it feels, yeah, okay. And I definitely want the 90 degrees. The only question is, you might not need it to go quite this deep. Anyway, I can get rid of this debug log here because it's pointing up because we're actually out of the screen from time to time. Yeah, maybe moderate that a little bit more. Again, we won't actually get to the 35 because that would only happen if we hit exactly 0. That's good, actually, because we can't see above the horizon well until we hit the pole. I'm happy with that. Ship it! It's done! It doesn't keep the same tile under the mouse anymore. I guess that's true. Because of the angle change. But there's no real way to avoid that exactly. It still, like, mostly goes in the direction that you expect. Like, I don't know. You guys can tune it. I have full faith that you guys will figure it out. There's a bit of a weird jump because it starts... It's not at the same angle. Whatever height would be the 60 is not actually where our camera starts at. So there's a weird initial little thing. Now we're doing it every frame, which isn't actually required, but it's not much in the way of overhead. Now the camera starts. There we go. So now it's you don't have that weird jump anymore. I don't know. Your mileage may vary. Okay. I think this might be the last thing we tackle, because we've been going for nearly 4 hours here. And I'm not sure we can fit something else in here before we finish. So I guess, does anyone have any questions? We can spend the next 10 minutes or so answering questions about the game here. Oh. I am out of soda. Turn on Northwest Wrap. I mean, if you want to see it. We can make sure that doesn't break anything. That actually, there's some value to that. Oh. Well, there you go. Why is it, come. Something in here. It must not be num rows, vertical spacing. Because it's definitely trying to run this. Oh, is it fucking... See, hold on. This goddamn... I should set it to, like, not serialized, because I keep getting fucking trapped by this. Every time. It drives me crazy when I want something that's a public, like... Just do this or hide in the inspector. That's what keeps effing me. Every time. Happens every let him dare multiple times. There, check that box. All the time. Whee! We can go forever! Every goddamn time. Like, part of me wants to set as a default for some of these things. Like, you need it for this, so you can feed in, you know, game objects and meshes and stuff. That's fine. But for, like, these types of properties, and as far, can you do a block? Like, because you have to do, this will only make height mountain not serialized. Right over there, see? But that's it. You have to, like, put this line in front of everyone. It'd be nice, like, I don't know if this works. Probably not. Wow, it so does not work. I mean, I think you can do it as a default for the class, but you don't want to do it for the class because you need some of this shit to be serialized. I mean, you could do it as a default for the class and then set individual fields to be serialized, but that's really annoying too. I mean, yeah, you can make them private. I guess if these were actually properties as opposed to fields, then they wouldn't be serialized in the inspector. Right? Because if I do public int some prop get set, some prop won't show up in here. Oh, it does. Oh, or did we just put in the height mountain again? Because this would be under num columns. Yeah, right over here. Okay, so it's not showing up, because, yeah. Oh, that's the read-only. So, yeah, between moisture planes and allow east-west, which would be right here. So the property doesn't, but you can't set a default with the property, right? Like, I can't, like, two. Feature auto-implemented property initializer cannot be used because it's not part of the C# 4.0 language specification. I mean, I could do it in the startup or something like that and set these default values. But that's the thing. Like, if you want to set... There's not a way to do it exactly what I want. I want to be able to define a block as serialized or a block as non-serialized. I mean, this would be okay. It's a little bit awkward, though. Like, it's a lot of extra verbosity. If I'm doing this, then I may as well put the fucking non-serialized in front of each one of these goddamn things. Suppose these could be read-only. That's true. Well, no. These can't be read-only. I do use the read-only property over here. It can't be read-only because we are going to want to initiate at runtime. We're going to want to initialize a hex map based on what the user has chosen, right? The user has chosen continents, huge size, high sea levels, and then we want to generate at that point. And you have to remember, with mono behaviors, you don't call a constructor. So read-only properties can only be set in the constructor, but we don't call the constructor ever on a mono behavior. The only place we do initialization instead is start, and by the time start runs, it's too late for us to set read-onlys. So that's not a good one. I mean, we got the read-onlys here as a whatever, but this actually will have to go. This can't be a read-only in the real version of the game. I think I set read-only here because I wanted to be able to make those changes without fucking around in the inspector all the time. Sorry, I'm starting to curse because I'm getting angry at this. I think that's why I set that to read-only, so that I wouldn't run into this trap. So maybe while developing, I should set all these to read-only. Since we don't have a UI. I don't know. Yeah, make an extra class for the properties that are serializable. Yeah, there's different ways, but I know there's the hide and inspector attribute, but you still have to do it every line. It doesn't set up a block. So I mean, yeah, there's two ways to hide it in the inspector. You can make it non-serializable, or you can use the hide in inspector. But it's still only going to do this, right? It's not going to start a whole block. Yeah, it only does the one value. And that's what I want. I want, like, none of these things. So you could do it in line. Can you, actually? Or does it have to be on its own line? Can I do that? I mean, that might be a little less annoying, actually. Okay, that suddenly becomes tolerable. It didn't occur to me. You know, in line. The problem is I didn't want this. I didn't want a big block of those because that looks stupid. But that's all of a sudden not the worst thing in the universe. Boom. Now, if it's hidden in the inspector, does it still not get serialized? So, right now, it's going to wrap east to west, but not north and south. If I change this, okay, good. No, oh, that's the other tricky thing. See, it doesn't show up in the inspector, but it does still get serialized. Because even though I set wrap east-west to false, it's still wrapping east-west. So people always tell me to use hide inspector, and I always just use system.non-serialized. Yeah, because it's still doing weird serialization, maybe because it showed up in the inspector once. Like, this is what we actually want here. Unless there's just a bug, and even when it's set to false, it's still doing wrapping, but... Nope, because now we're getting a proper error. Hooray! So we want this. So let's go ahead and enable this one. So now we should get wrapping north-south. So there's definitely a difference between hide and inspector. Yeah, there we go. Now the nice thing is that even if something's not in the inspector, you can go into, where is it? Right here. Debug mode. And there's still some values you can see. Normally you can still see them when you go into debug mode. I don't know. Yeah, north-south wrapping. Not really what we want, but... So it's still a lot of extra noise, but now it's suddenly tolerable to do this kind of thing. Because, yeah, we're never going to want this serialized because we don't want to set these in the inspector. We're always going to want to set these in-game. And we want to set reasonable defaults here in code, not in the inspector. Yeah. Oh, you just got back? Yeah, I agree. The map is looking swell, huh? Oh, do I have to... Yeah. I have to restart it here because I made a change to the code. Let's run it full screen. And we should take a check and make sure, how's our frame rate? Right, it does slow down a little when you're moving because we're repositioning some stuff. But it's still sitting at like 500 FPS. With a lot of really obvious optimizations still available to us. So that's pretty good. 500 FPS. Could probably run on a phone. I mean, you do want to turn on VSync. There's no reason not to have VSync on here, but with it off, you get a bit of more of a sense of the actual, processing time. VSync you want on because no screen tearing, plus you may as well save some power. I mean, even on a computer, you actually save a little bit of power, a little bit of electrical bill, but more importantly on a mobile device. You can do an attribute over multiple lines, so it's a bit ugly. You have to, send me a link. Well, I could probably just Google it, but... Will it be easy enough to drop our own hexes into the code? Oh, well, I mean... Yeah, it should be easy enough. Probably in the end, you'd want to do this with some sort of config file, an XML or JSON file, or something like that, that describes different tile types, and you'd probably want the map generation code to be outputted to, like a Lua file or something like that, that's just easy and portable and independent. And we've covered that sort of stuff before. Like, again, Project Porcupine, just look at that for an example of it. In this one here, I won't be covering that, but it wouldn't be too hard. And certainly if you're accessing the code, it would be very easy to make your own tweaks to the various, terrain. Just, just tweaking your meshes here, add a new line for the new material, and in the code, you'd have to describe, like, how does that material actually show up in some fashion? You know, via the update hex visuals. This is the logic that determines which mesh and which material gets applied to the terrain based on elevation and material. No, this is the exact opposite of... No! This is so not a use case for scriptable object. Stop trying to make scriptable objects happen, Sir Moji. It's not going to happen. Because that's it. I don't want to change the values in the inspector. I don't. I like, when I'm working in code, I like to make the changes here. I find, like, finding the right scriptable object to click on, to find, so that I can change some properties over here. I don't like that as my workflow. I like it here. This is where my data is. It's all in a great place. I'm explicitly trying to avoid using the inspector. Like, that's I guess, my beef with the scriptable objects. Is the use cases for scriptable objects are the exact times I never want to be fucking around in the inspector. To me, the only reason to use the inspector is to link to prefabs. Link to project resources to a game object. That's the only reason I ever want to use an inspector, which is why I don't use scriptable objects. And in fact, on many projects, I don't even use this link over here. I will instead, in code, I'll do, you know, a resources.load, you know, models / forest. And it's like, makes me even happier to just work in pure code. But I think that's it. I'm very, like, just pure code oriented as much as possible. Makes me much happier. Oh, yeah, yeah, I don't want to do the one-liner, but I see what you're saying. You could define a bunch of properties in one go. So someone in chat is saying one way to, like, put more things in sort of a block. It's still not a block. It's just a one-liner. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Because you can define things in one line like that, and the non-serialized, I guess, will cover all that, but... Terrible. You made a game before? I've made 17 games for Love and Dare. Internal instead of public. That's interesting. Ba-da-ba-ba-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, and you could split the one-liner, but yeah, you can put new lines in between there. But yeah, it does feel kind of awkward. The idea is, like, can you find a way that feels non-stupid for your own personal interpretation of what non-stupid feels like? Of all of the options, this is probably the least stupid to me. It's still pretty stupid. There's correct me if I'm wrong. It's been ages since I've worked in C++, but in C++, when you're doing your variables and your methods and things like that, you can do, like, blocks of, like, you could do something like this, right? Protected, and then everything is like, these are all my protected functions, and then you could be like public, and like, these are all my public things, right? Like, that's the sort of thing I was like, oh, it'd be nice to be able to do something like that. I think we're wrapping this up. Anything else? You code anything else, or only C#? Oh, I mean, I've written code in lots of things. My background's actually as a web application developer, originally in Perl, going through quite a few things. The most recent thing that's still a while ago that I worked in extensively was a lot of Ruby on Rails. Really enjoyed that environment. At the time, that entire Ruby on Rails thing was just a huge revelation, a big up from the previous workflow. Now there's a lot of other frameworks for a lot of different languages. But that was, to me, that was one of the first ones that, like, really was like, wow, this is a great framework to interact with. Very enjoyable when, like, I first discovered that. I mean, and Ruby by itself is a lovely language. Ruby and Python, a few of those are very elegant, beautiful, wonderful languages. But it was about the framework for me. It was the Rails framework that really, like, drove it home. Yeah, I was asking a question about C++. So I've worked in C, C++. Like, I taught myself C and C++ and BASIC when I was, very, very young. At least a lot younger than I was now. I've been forced to work in PHP, but only forced. Never willingly. Ever. God damn. Can you make the camera zoom smooth? Well, you'd have to define that. what do you fucking mean by smooth? It is smooth. It smoothly lerps from one angle to another. It's totally smooth right now. But it depends on how you define it by that. Like, we could... I mean, I suppose what you could do, instead of making the camera jump directly to the target from the mouse wheel, is you sort of calculate where it should be and then lerp between frames to get there. But then there would be sort of lag. It probably looks a little less smooth for you guys, too, because of the video capture, which is only at 30 frames per second. So that might be part of it, too. I've worked in Pascal. Pascal is what I studied in university, because I'm old, and the university program was way out of date. But yes, Pascal was literally the language that I did my entire university study in. And it was terrible. Oh, it was so bad. Yeah, so like what you could do, right, is right over here, is instead of setting the camera position, and instead of setting the camera rotation, you save it in a quaternion, like you just save it in a variable, and then lerp it. I mean, you could even do quaternion dot lerp in here, right, from our current rotation to the target rotation by time.delta time, something like that. Like that would give it a little bit of something something. Yeah, that's clearly much too slow. But yeah, you could do something like that. But it's like, it's weird because it just feels like it just slightly lagging behind the mouse. It don't feel good. It don't feel right. So I'll leave you that. You can experiment and see if you can find something that quote unquote feels smooth, for whatever, you know, value of smooth that might be. And it feels perfectly fine here. Like, I don't... Feels good to me. Also the position, not just the angle. And the position... It feels very... I don't know. You guys, when you try it, you'll have to see, and then maybe there's something you can tune. But to me, it feels like I kind of would expect it to feel. It's a little bit... I don't know if the angle change is right. That's probably something I would tune, is the values at which the angle starts to change. Maybe we never go all the way to 90 degrees, for example. I don't know. Like, that's something you look into. You know, just really cut down on how much of an angle change there is. And that might feel better. Hardly tell it's happening anymore. It's like, I don't know. You could do physics like that. You could actually, you know, yeah. Someone had mentioned earlier, like have some sort of rigid body and just apply forces or something like that. We'll see. And it's also one of those things, every game does it a little differently, and everyone tends to have a little complaint. So partially it's going to be a little numerical tuning, some of it's going to be a code logic. Honestly, I'm not convinced that we need any of the angle stuff at all. Like, I might be totally happy just cutting that out and just leaving us locked at 60. Like, I'm kind of okay with this. But some people really wanted the angle change. So that would probably be an option you could turn on and off. Max zoom distance, min zoom distance, angle at each, does the angle change? Put that in an option file and then just say, I don't give a shit anymore. So there you go. All right, we're going to wrap this up, folks. It's been over 4 hours. Thank you very much for coming out today. Tomorrow, did I make the model? I made all these models. Technically, we didn't get around to it in this particular one. I did grab a couple of open game art models, a dwarf and a horse to use for movement stuff, but that'll have to wait until the next step in the tutorial. Next live stream is tomorrow. We're going to be playing actual Civilization 6. Then, of course, Saturday is our normal live stream where we do something. I don't know what we're going to play this Saturday. We'll see how it goes. Maybe more cities, but I think we'll probably play something else and see how it feels. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Thanks for supporting the channel. Let me check to make sure there were no more tips that came in at the end here. No, we're good. Do want to shout out again to Frosted Mantis, Essie, Ketsuhiro, and Tiburon. Thank you very much for the contributions to the Whiskey and Chocolate Fund. I'll be having some right now. See you on Wednesday. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Hey, I want to say a great big thank you to all the June Patreon supporters and these Mike Check supporters. We've got Yukofin, Eric Sumner, Tiburon, Mighty Mix, Pavel Zdanov, Drazion, Michael McClintock, Aaron Toyson, Craig Mortel, The Not So Evil Engineer, Julien Auger-Lafont, Marius Fieldvold, Speedy Savant, Valiant Cake Fiend, Thomas Oberson, Jason Yanity, Stephen Bonnerman, Kale the Quick, and Neil Blakey Milner, and absolutely everyone who watches, shares, favorites, and subscribes to these videos. Thank you so, so much.